Hello, my name is Brian Burnham, and this is Module 10, a case study. All right, so what do we know? Let's summarize everything that we've been given. We have the Hernandez family who moved to Dover. They have a son, Miguel, who's a sophomore, a talented athlete, and a great teammate. He becomes a starting quarterback, and he's the first sophomore to ever earn that title at Nottingham High School. He suffers a spinal injury in the quarterfinals of the playoffs that ended up paralyzing Miguel from the waist down. Nottingham High School and the surrounding community was very supportive of the Hernandez family and Miguel while he rehabbed. We have Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez, the parents. Miguel attends Nottingham High School, as I mentioned. This school serves 3,200 students. There was a meeting held before Miguel returned to school. Ms. Guzman, a school counselor, during the meeting assured Miguel's parents that once he was approved by his doctors to return, that Miguel would be welcomed back to school. At the meeting's end, Miguel's parents informed Ms. Guzman that Miguel would be using a wheelchair and would simply need access to classrooms and no other accommodations would be necessary. 2 weeks following the meeting, Miguel returned to school. As the principal, I thought it would be a good idea to honor him with a ceremony celebrating his commitment to the team and the school. So let's look at the facts. Miguel reported to first period 2 weeks after that meeting had taken place, but was told by Ms. Guzman that a meeting had been requested with him and he needed to go directly to her office. During this meeting, Miguel was informed by Ms. Guzman that she had to change his biology class because the classroom that it was being held in was not wheelchair accessible. The new class would meet his graduation requirements, but it was not a college prep course like biology was. Obviously, this upset Mrs. Hernandez, his mom. She called the very next morning requesting a meeting with me, the principal, and demanded that he be placed back in biology because he was being denied access to his education. Mr. Hernandez then showed up with their family lawyer, and he made the statements that lawyers make, and he simply asked the question, do you understand the implications of denying my client access to a classroom at this school? My client has the right to a free and appropriate public education. He needs specific services, and these include access to biology class and anything else that we deem necessary to ensure that Miguel's rights are protected. All right, legal or ethical issues. Obviously, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 is probably in violation. It's a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of a disability. This law applies to public elementary and secondary schools, among other entities. Also, FAPE, Free Appropriate Public Education. It falls under the Individuals with Disabilities Act, IDEA. There's a process that schools and districts must go through, which is evaluation, at no cost to the parents before any action is taken with respect to the initial placement of a child who has a disability, or before any significant changes in that placement can be made. Ms. Guzman didn't do any of these evaluations. She's not trained to do those evaluations. So we are in violation of IDEA, amongst other things. Miguel Hernandez's rights are being violated as he is being denied FAPE and is being discriminated against under Section 504 due to a spinal injury that he incurred while playing quarterback for the school. Ms. Guzman clearly has some explaining to do to me, but that's something that I will deal with later on in the presentation. Synthesizing and further explaining the facts, the people obviously have been introduced to Miguel Hernandez, the student, Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez, his parents, Ms. Guzman, our school counselor, Dr. Harvey, the superintendent, Howard Carey, the Hernandez family attorney, and myself, the school principal. The place is Nottingham High School. It's the central hub of activity for the city of Dover. It was built in the early 1950s. It is an old building. 25% of the buildings are not up to code. Enrollment is 3,200 students. It's a big school. Portable classrooms provide additional space. And a biology classroom is not accessible to Miguel in his wheelchair. The Nottingham program and what is the culture of Nottingham, there's a supportive community in place. The high school is esteemed for their academic and athletic success. It is a public high school, but it does lack funding. Okay, we need to prioritize. We need to figure out if the conflict, the situation, or the decision can be damaging to the stakeholders or the community. And the answer to that is absolutely yes. Why would community members or stakeholders not be embarrassed by this situation? If prominent community members have to answer questions about why a school is violating federal mandate and law, that puts everyone in a very compromising and potentially damaging situation, whether it be politically, civically, or simply just being unprofessional. Anytime a lawsuit or grievance amongst community members is brought towards said community, then people come out looking poor. We have a large number of people involved: myself, Ms. Guzman, Miguel, Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez, citizens, and the public leaders of Dover. Have all relevant stakeholders been consulted? Mr. Harvey needs to be brought in and brought up to speed on what's going on, especially since Mr. Hernandez brought the family's lawyer into the mix. And also, I think the biology teacher needs to be present during most of these meetings, as it is her class that we're talking about specifically. Can I learn more about the situation? Absolutely. I've got a few questions right off the top. Are there any other classrooms available during the day that can house a biology class, a lab class that has a lab setting, that have adequate accessibility? Can the class be moved to that room? How many classrooms do we have in the building that don't meet specifications for wheelchair access? What was Ms. Guzman thinking changing Miguel's schedule without speaking to the administrators, his original biology teacher, myself as the principal, or someone before a wholesale change was made to a student schedule like this? Does she understand what FAPE is? Has she ever heard of and been trained in IDEA and Section 504? Did she go through an evaluation process? Did she do everything that I mentioned earlier? The answers to those questions obviously are no. So we're in some hot water right here. Showing empathy towards the Hernandez family may go a long way to showing them that this was a mistake, never intentional, and we as a school want to get the situation fixed for Miguel as quickly as possible. And then, do I have enough information to make a decision? I do think it's tough to make a decision, but given the information, there is enough here to at least get the ball rolling for some sort of a decision. We're going to look at those choices here. Our options. I'll go through these very quickly. Option 1 is to do nothing. Option 2 would be to move Miguel's biology class to a room that is appropriately accessible for all students and make the change immediately. Option 3 is to look at Miguel's schedule itself and see if it can be changed to place him in a biology class that is in another room that is properly accessible. Option 4 is OLP, or online biology. Option 5 is to contract services out to another school. Transportation would need to be provided. Any money for the program he would be entering would need to be paid all by the district. And option 6 would be new construction. Evaluating these options, option 1, if you do nothing, there are no pros. Obviously, the cons are the family becomes very upset and embarrasses the community. There are legal repercussions coming down the pipe. Option 2, move biology class to a more accessible room for all students. This takes care of a lot of issues. It happens immediately. It allows us to follow all the federal mandates. It supports the well-being of the student. Cons are it forces students to change the location they've become familiar with. We'd also be asking a teacher to relocate. Option 3, changing Miguel's schedule. Again, this happens immediately, which is good. It follows all the federal mandates and regulations that are in place, and it supports the most and best well-being of Miguel. It keeps him in the class he needs, and it maintains putting him in a situation in a classroom that's accessible to him. Cons are it's not a guarantee to fix the problem, because it may eliminate Miguel from being in another class that he has to be in for the same reason due to the school's current master schedule. I know at Summit where I teach, there's sometimes if you move a kid out of a class, it changes their whole schedule, and that is a negative effect on Miguel. Online biology, OLP, is an option. It keeps Miguel in the college prep class that he needs. However, the hands-on learning that a lab science like biology would have in a school setting looks different when it's done online. Parents may still be upset, and they could still bring a lawsuit against the school or the district. And does this truly support what's best for Miguel? Option 5, we can contract services out to guarantee Miguel's needs are met. This allows us to continue to follow the mandates and laws. However, it would take a long time to have an IEP meeting. Eligibility has not officially been established. It removes Miguel from his home school, which could have a negative emotional effect on Miguel. And the new construction, for obvious reasons, it fixes the school building situation, but cons is it takes too much time. Miguel may not even be able to benefit from the change. Plus, budget. It could simply not be money there to build a new school. I think the best thing to do would be some sort of combination of option 2 and 3 together, or option 2 if possible. Just switch classrooms. It's my job to advocate for every student, keep their best interest in educational success at the forefront of every decision that I make. I also have the responsibility of ensuring that every student is receiving their free, appropriate public education and their needs are met swiftly when a problem arises. Hopefully, this decision helps put the parents' minds at ease. It allows them to not have to follow through with their lawsuit, fingers crossed. The school is meeting Miguel's immediate needs, following the law, and the community remains an advocate for the school, maintaining their positive relationship. And then how do I implement this decision? Well, I need to have a meeting with Ms. Guzman and assure her that this has to happen and make sure she understands that there's really no wiggle room. We need to figure it out. Once that's been done and I know that this is going to be a go, then I would contact the parents. Outside of Ms. Guzman, they need to be the first to know that this decision has been made. Discuss the probability of Miguel needing more than we initially thought. Do we need to get him started on an evaluation for a 504 or an IEP? Mom and Dad may not be aware of everything that we can provide in that situation. Inform Mr. Harvey, our superintendent, of the decision and the parental response. Keeping the people above you in the chain of command informed of decisions is always good practice, in my opinion. Call a meeting between the teachers being affected by this decision. Make sure they understand why some of them are going to be swapping rooms and that sort of thing. It's my job to address not only the students and their parents, but also my staff. Make sure they know that I'm doing everything I'm doing for a reason and that it's being done with empathy and love. Address the issue with staff at the next faculty meeting. I need to make sure that all of my staff understand what the Americans with Disability Act is, IDEA, FAPE, and Section 504, and ask my staff to sign off saying that they received this training so that I have documentation for anything in the future. Ask if I could meet with Mr. Harvey, the school board, and possibly the mayor to talk about funding for a new school down the road. Clearly that needs to happen at some point. And then continue to monitor the situation. In my opinion, this will be a remainder of the year observation to make sure that Miguel continues to receive everything but also that my staff continues to provide the services that I expect. He deserves the best, and as does all my students, and it's my job to make sure those are continuing to be given. Also, I need to make sure the proper steps are being taken at the district level to make sure this type of thing doesn't happen again as well. Thank you for your attention.